Welcome to A Change at the Chance. My name is Ryan Lowe and I am a sixth grader at the second school. 3 years ago, I saw an image of a dead turtle that had been choked by plastic nets. I started researching the overuse of plastic and its many negative impacts, which then exposed me to other problems such as global warming, eroding ecosystems, corporate greed, and discrimination. I started this podcast because I want to find solutions to the problems in this world. These include global warming and climate change, animals facing extinction, plastic pollution, systemic racism, and gender equality. These are just some of them. I would like to make a change by starting to educate people, especially young people, and hopefully encourage them to make a change too. In my podcast, you'll hear me interviewing experts so we can all learn. I will be meeting educators, authors, policymakers, activists, and scientists, to name a few. Last episode, I interviewed my incredible science teacher at the second school, Miss Vicky Obenchain, and talked about environmental issues and the overuse of plastic. Please listen in if you haven't. Today, we are here with a very special guest and a VIP in his field, Mr. David Gottfried. Mr. Gottfried is known as the father of the global green building movement, founded the U.S. Green Building Council and World Green Building Councils. His findings and policies have likely reduced global warming and ecological footprint more than any other in the world. Hello, Mr. Gottfried. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Ryan, and great to be here. I'm so excited about your show and what you're trying to do. It's very important.
Thank you for that. So let's begin the questions. Number one, what motivated you to change the way buildings were constructed?
Well, I studied engineering and management in college at Stanford and was an engineer. And then I became a real estate developer in my first career for about 10 years in Washington, D.C. And I watched how buildings were built from the traditional way. But this was a long time ago. I started in the early 1980s. And back then I found that we really didn't care about energy efficiency, health inside of buildings, including air quality was a new field. We had just looked at creating the recycling movement. And some of the things I learned in school about solar and energy efficiency just weren't making their way into the design, construction, and operation of buildings. And so I got this idea that we could potentially change status quo and transform the entire building industry.
Wow, I really love your work and the things that you do and create. So, what were some of the first steps you took?
Well, it's kind of daunting to think you're going to change probably the world's largest industry. But we had some experience in standards and codes. And we learned that in the US, many things, including buildings, have codes and standards. So if you can get to the embedded standard, such as an energy standard, an air quality standard, or water standards and performances, you can change the underlying requirements for how you design and build. And so the best way to get at that was really at the time in England. And they had the first building rating system in the world called BREEAM. So I had learned about that in about 1991 and got this idea of bringing and learning from that, not quite bringing it, but studying BREEAM and creating our own US rating system. And that could be used by everybody in the industry, including government and even banks, to give incentives and governments for tax credits. And so we invented what became the LEED green building rating system.
Your ideas are amazing.
Thank you.
Can you please talk about the creation of the U.S. Green Building Council and what its initial goals were?
Sure. Well, the idea was first to make the USGBC a nonprofit. And everything I had done before that was for profit, meaning I wanted to make a lot of money for myself and those I worked with, but it was very much focused just on money and economics. With the nonprofit, though, our goal was bigger outside of David and how much money he could make. It was about the whole United States and public benefit, public good, that we could lower the amount of construction, demolition, waste in landfills. We could use less energy and slow down climate change. We could use different refrigerants and not hurt the ozone and create and expand the ozone hole. We could even impact sea warming and acidification and rising. And so we made a nonprofit. We wanted members, and we identified 13 types of entities involved in buildings, from architects and engineers to banks that gave them money, tenants who would rent and sit in the building, or students like most of you, or teachers who were in the buildings. But beyond that, we had manufacturers and utilities and scientists and property managers and banks and insurance companies and professional societies like the American Institute of Architects, American Society of Landscape Architects. They all had to come together to create the new almost language and method of creating these high performance, healthy buildings.
So you realized that this was not about the money, and so you brought everyone together to do one big job.
One big job. Money was very much involved, but the organization wasn't driven by personal gain. It was driven by public gain. But if you just disregard the money, I couldn't get developers and builders and owners of real estate to play with us. And so money was still very much front and center. We had to figure out how we could make them more money through green, or save money through green, or have less risk through green. All of those get their attention. Let's say you have a big office building, you have 200 tenants in it. It's huge, 1 million square feet. But through green, they lease at a higher rental rate. They stay because the air quality is good and there's more daylighting, and it's healthy and people love it. So the landlord makes more money. They're happy. So they don't even have to like green. They like the green of money.
I see. That's really interesting. So, Mr. Gottfried, you also created the LEED certification, is that right?
Well, I founded the U.S. Green Building Council, which owns LEED. And so LEED was a program, a committee under our umbrella. And I had the idea for a green building rating system in the U.S., which I got from the U.K. Canada had one also before us, and I studied that. And then one of our founding papers that I submitted when we started was to create a rating tool like LEED. But I recruited people who were volunteers to create the LEED committee, and they stayed with it even today. We started in 1993, so it's a long time, 27 years.
I love the way you care so much about the environment that you will do this much to help it. So, why is the LEED certification also good for the environment?
Well, LEED is a sophisticated rating tool with actually embedded categories of performance and points. And you can be the highest level is platinum. And now we even have LEED net zero and carbon neutral. And then there's gold and silver and LEED certified. But all of those categories really embrace about 5 main subsets. So you have to have high level energy performance of the building, the most important because of climate change. And then you'll have water, indoor environmental quality, which has the quality of the air, so it doesn't make people sick. all those products that used to off-gas toxic stuff, biocides and fungicides and paints and things like that. Waste and waste minimization, very important because the landfills are filling up. And a big portion of these landfills in our neighborhoods come from demolition of buildings and construction. Like if you've ever seen even a home built, there's so much scrap wood and scrap metal and just waste, and that can be recycled. We care about where the building is or the house, so transportation efficiency, because you don't want to build a building and all of a sudden 2,000 cars are going there and polluting on their way. So where is it? Is it sitting on top of a BART or a metro? Can buses get to it or carpooling? Very important that it's just not in the middle of nowhere creating huge traffic. We care about these products and the toxicities. We care about things like day lighting and quality. So all these things are embedded in the categories of LEED. And then you look for environmental performance overall. We also have some prerequisites. Things are mandatory. That if you don't do this, it can't be green, something like that. In the earlier days, I wanted no smoking in buildings. If you smoked in a building, it was not green. And we got in big fights with the Tobacco Institute. It became very political of, what is okay with smoking. And that was a big fight. There were other fights like no vinyl in buildings. And vinyl, when it burns, has chloride, which is toxic. Things like PVC. And in Europe, they're very progressive, sometimes more than us, and they banned PVC and things like that. We still don't have a ban here in the US.
I thought I researched enough about the LEED standard, but I see there's a lot more to it than what I found out.
It's a complicated system, but it can also be simplistic. The beauty of it is you can use it in different ways. You can go full out and certify and submit all the substantial documents and proof, or you can just use it as a brainstorm tool in a 2-hour meeting and say, how are we doing on energy? How are we doing on water? So it's as good as a guideline as well.
Very interesting. So, have you been happy about the way that business and communities have been adopting LEED?
Yeah, the progress over the years since this, I first had the idea for the U.S. Green Building Council in 1992 around October. So here we are, quite a few years later, some gray hair too. We never dreamed it would be this big. There's no way. We called it U.S. Green Building Council. My logo looked like a government seal circle with an oak leaf inside, but no way we could dream this big. It just went crazy. Our timing was perfect. The earth needed it. We were first in commercial buildings in the U.S. We put together a good group, but if you look at the progress, LEED is now in about 165 countries. That's more than half the world. If you add up all the LEED projects in the world, I don't even know anymore, but it could be 15 billion square feet of space. If you say each square footage is $200-300 a square foot times 15 billion, we created $1 trillion economy. $1 trillion. That's huge. If you look at cities and states, I think we have every city and state in the United States. We have 80 chapters now for the USGBC. And then in '98, I went to Japan and welcomed the Japan Green Building Council, the second country in the world. And as a much younger man on Earth Day in Tokyo, I thought with the camera in my face, reverse translation, I thought, okay, I've got the US and Japan. This is going to go global. So I very boldly announced okay, I'm now announcing the foundation of the World Green Building Council. That was 98 with Japan. Uh, in 99, GAP Foundation gave me some money, and I hosted 10 countries in San Francisco to take our model and go back to their country and create their own country green building councils. It was amazing. In that room was a friend I had in Australia, someone from Russia flew out, England, Canada, Mexico, um, Japan was there, Brazil came. And these folks, most of them went back home and created their own green building councils. So now the World Green Building Council has over 100 countries with green building councils. And that was the second nonprofit that I created. Um, Both of these I gave away. I funded with my own money. I sat on the board anywhere from 6 to 15 years, and then I fired myself. And I let others run them. And sometimes I go to the meetings and I'm proud. And sometimes, I go on to do other things, like walk my dog quietly in the park. So no one could dream it would be that big with tax credits and codes. We have about 350,000 LEED accredited professionals have taken our exam. We have, 100 cities with ordinances for green building. It's the biggest in the world.
That's really interesting that you started small and it became as big as all around the world.
And one important thing for everyone is I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have a lot of money. I had never created a nonprofit. But I was like you guys. I was passionate. Just what you said, Ryan. I wanted to make a difference. Things bothered me about Earth, and I cared about the future. I wanted to make a difference in my life somehow beyond just money in my bank account. And so I gathered others like me who could dream because we didn't know how to do it. So we were dreamers. But if you gather millions of dreamers, you can change the world. And that's what we did. When I go to Japan, Russia, Brazil, China, I've been to 20 countries. And you find someone who shares this dream, who's in the building industry, who understands that the way we're designing a building wasn't as great as our brains could do. And you ignite their brilliance that wasn't being utilized in their design. And you ask for it. Then together we can change the world.
Those words will inspire so many people. So, I read that last year 38.2 billion tons of carbon dioxide was pumped into the air. What are things that the listeners can do in their homes to help the environment?
Well, good statistic. It's sad. And every year the CO2 is growing. And the top two is China and the US. And then there's India and Russia. Some countries are doing better than we are here in the US. They take it more seriously, like the Netherlands and Germany. And they're doing things that you can do. One, what kind of car are you driving? What's the miles per gallon? What's the CO2 of your car? Is it an electric vehicle? There are a lot of them now. If not an electric vehicle, get a plug-in hybrid. Even better, get rid of your car. Walk. Take the bus, carpool, bicycle, work at home, stop commuting. Do you need to make that trip? After your car, I would look at your house. Is your house energy efficient? If it's an older home from the 1915s, it's a craftsman bungalow. And we had one of those, I agree on that one. Well, the windows are bad. They're single pane. You can make them double pane. There's no insulation in the walls. You can blow in cellulose. You can change your furnace and get it to be a high SEER ratio. You can buy better lighting. That could be LED. You can look at your water usage and capture rainwater and use it for your plants. You can get rid of your lawns and stop the sprinklers and go to plant material that doesn't require external watering. You could look at your toilets and your baths. You can capture through gray water systems your tub and sink water and shower. A black water would be taking your toilet water, and there are compostable toilets and things to reuse that. What's the air quality in your home? Don't buy those cheap cabinets made with crappy glues that make your baby sick, or look at the paints and the stains and the adhesives and get no VOC ones, volatile organic compounds. Are you composting your food? Do you recycle? So those are simple steps, but you should have almost no waste. We put out our recycling in a huge blue bin, and our waste is this tiny brown bin, and the recycling's 3 to 4 times more than the waste. And we're composting our backyard, making gorgeous fertilizer, and soon it's got worms in it, and I use it for my new plants. And then in your work, or your job, or your school, you could do more. Are you helping to green your school? And even someone in kindergarten can do that. The kindergartner could go home and scream at the parents for not recycling and composting and driving their big SUV. So we all can do it no matter our age. We just have to wake up.
Thank you for this, Mr. Gottfried. I'll be using this a lot in my own life. So, I found out that you have a podcast called Regen 360. Could you please tell us about your podcast?
Sure, I, like you, have an iTunes podcast. I did 65 interviews, and I try to get change agents who inspired me, just like what you're doing, Ryan. You know, one of the best ways to change things is to be inspired, get new ideas. But at times it's a hard fight to be a change agent. So you have to look for people who can give you hope. And that's what I did in my podcast. I look for people who are brilliant, bright, passionate, deliberate change agents who gave me hope. And so I hope you enjoy my shows as well as Ryan's. A lot of great people, brilliant architects and thought leaders and scientists and authors and actors, and even one rap musician, MC Yogi, who gave me hope.
That's really cool, Mr. Gottfried. You are also an author of many books. Can you talk about your books?
Thanks. I wrote 3 memoirs. Love memoir writing. Not lots of footnotes, not technical. I like to teach through story. And that's what my books are, they're stories. And at the end, I'm hoping to inspire. My last book, written maybe, 5, 6, 7 years ago, it's called Explosion Green. And it's our 20-year story of the green building movement. A lot of things that Ryan asked me here. And it was fun to write. You'll notice at the end of the book, it's very important to me. It's called Why Us, our summing up. How did we become the biggest in the world? And could I look at the 20 years and synthesize it into simple steps that everyone can do, even the listeners of this podcast? It doesn't matter your age, but what do we do that could work for you in your school, in your home, in your community? And in the back are those steps. And out of those steps, I've created a new program. It's called Build Move. How do you create a build move? How do you build a movement and create legacy? And what are the 7 steps of Build Move? And I now have taught 2 training programs on it at 1440.org, which is a beautiful campus near Santa Cruz. And for 3 days, I teach people the 7 steps. I'm thinking about what to do with it in a broader capacity beyond just a little course. So maybe it's my 4th book, which I haven't written yet, called Build Move. So those are fun. My first book was called Greed to Green, and that was our 10-year story, where I went from a greedy real estate developer of the 80s to founding this green movement with others. And the middle book is curious. It's called Greening My Life, and it's an Excel rating system inspired by LEED that I did for my own life in 10 categories of does David have a green life or not? And when I created the 10 categories of health and relationship and stewardship, finances, giving back, and others, I only scored 53 points in the beginning, which was lower than the lowest bar. And so then I worked for 10 years to get to a platinum life.
Wow.
So those are some of the books, but you can find them on Amazon. I'd probably go with The Last Explosion Green. And I was really pleased because President Bill Clinton gave me the cover testimonial for my book. And we had partnered with him on greening of the White House when he was president. So I feel a real kindredship with him and asked him to support me. And it was great.
So your books were one of the many ways that you were able to educate people.
Yeah, books are great at that. You can sit at home on your laptop and then put your thoughts into the world, such as this podcast is great, and blogs and books and courses, either online or live. I tend now to like online a lot.
Those words that you just said are going to inspire and make many people idolize you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I don't know if I want to be idolized. I think as I get older, I just hope my words, maybe my actions, and some of the things we've created inspire people, motivate them, give them hope, and maybe I always look at the light. I had a mentor who talked about the light and keeping the light on. His name was David Brower, very famous. And I always think about our spirit and light, and how do you keep the light on? And it's renewable and self-sustaining. And so I try to kindle and nurture others' lights, but in turn, their inspiration, their passion ignites me, just as Ryan's doing here. And so that's my real hope.
Now, those words are full of wisdom.
I don't know. It's all I know.
So, do you feel that the government can do more to lessen carbon emissions?
Well, the government can do so much and has done a lot historically. You know, we love working with the Clinton administration and Obama. And I also just love local and state government. Some of my best partners and our best partners were cities who just were so passionate and powerful. I have so many memories of like Santa Monica and San Diego and Austin and Seattle and Boulder, and just passionate and strong city civic leaders willing to green their own buildings, willing to mandate green building, willing to force recycling and electric vehicles and demonstrate change through the things that they could control. But beyond that, they can give incentives, money, tax credits, permit accelerations. So cities really, and states and national government can do so much. We partnered so well with the White House way back when, and even the post office and the State Department. I worked with the Navy on a building. You wouldn't think it, but one of the first green buildings was the Navy, because the head of the Navy liked green. The mayor of Seattle, when I started, was an architect, and he mandated all buildings in Seattle in the year 2000 go silver, LEED silver. And that helped. Pataki in New York created the first green building tax credit. Even state departments were doing green embassies. Totally cool. It's a little sad where our current government is. It's sad they don't understand science. It's sad what they're doing. I wish they could wake up. I don't even know if I care whether our leader understands green or not. He talks about being a billionaire so much, and he owns real estate, and he could really make himself richer by going beyond LEED Platinum to net zero and showing the way through his own buildings and the country. And that's the future. You see, if we're not green, really, we're dead. And we want to live more than anything. So the economy has to follow life and be life-sustaining. And if you really want to understand economics, you understand life and health. Health of the planet and health of the people.
So I see your opinion on our current government, and I understand it. So, now, what's the best way for people to follow you online?
Well, I have a website. It's regen360.net, REGEN360.net. I have the podcast, Regen 360, on iTunes. And then buy Explosion Green, the book. But beyond me, check out the U.S. Green Building Council at usgbc.org. See what they're up to and the latest on LEED. Much bigger than me. Huge group now with hundreds of staff doing great things. And there's the worldgbc.org website. You see what's going on with these countries. One of our colleagues who ran the USGBC for years created and is pushing forward the WELL International Building System for Health. That's another great place to go. So those are some of the ideas.
I've got to say, you're one of the people that I admire. You're one of the people that gives me hope. So, thank you for joining us today, Mr. Gottfried. It has been an honor having you as our second guest. Well, Mr. Gottfried has taught us a lot today, and since most of us here listening have cars, the first thing we can do is just check to see how much CO2 we use in the car every day. And if you can, try to limit your usage of driving your car so you can limit the amount of pollution. And if you can, try to limit your usage of your car so you can limit the amount of pollution. If you don't want to do that, then instead of using your car, you can bike, you can walk, you can use a carpool, you can just stay home or get a better car. So, that wraps up our second episode of A Change is a Chance. Thank you for listening, and I hope you learned something. See you on the next episode.